Do you remember those African-American recipes from the 1960s no one makes anymore? These recipes once filled kitchens with the smell of slow-simmered greens, sweet spices, and the comfort of family gathered close. What does it mean for a culture when those flavors quietly disappear? Chicken bog was a dish that stretched a small pantry into a family feast, and it still tells the story of Carolina kitchens in the 1960s. Rice, chicken, and smoked sausage came together in one heavy pot, simmering until every grain of rice soaked up the broth and fat. Home cooks loved it because it required no fancy cuts of meat and no complicated timing. A hen that had already given eggs could be simmered until tender, and a single link of sausage added deep flavor without extra cost. People gathered around while it cooked because the scent of seasoned steam filled the house. It was common to start it in the morning before church, so the pot would be ready when everyone returned, hungry and laughing. Families would add whatever vegetables the garden or neighbor supplied, from bell peppers to a few handfuls of field peas. It was hearty enough to feed children who had been outside all day and elders who needed something easy to chew. The dish was both meal and memory, a sign of how African-American families turned simple ingredients into celebration. Today, it rarely appears outside of small Southern gatherings, yet it deserves another moment at the table. Sweet potato spoon bread was a warm, spoonable bread pudding that captured the sweetness of the harvest and the thrift of African-American kitchens in the 1960s. It was lighter than cornbread, yet richer than a dessert, a cross between a soufflé and a family casserole. Mashed sweet potatoes folded into cornmeal batter gave a natural caramel flavor that sugar alone could never match. Cooks baked it in heavy cast iron so the edges crisped while the center stayed soft and custard-like. Families served it beside greens or fried fish, and children often stole bites straight from the pan before supper began. The recipe made good use of leftover sweet potatoes from Sunday dinner, stretching the value of every root dug from backyard gardens. Farm workers carried spoon bread in small tins for a quick meal in the fields because it tasted good, warm, or cold. At church socials, a single pan vanished within minutes, proof of its quiet fame. Many remember the way the house smelled as the bread rose, a scent of nutmeg and butter that filled the evening air. Today it hides in faded notebooks, but one taste brings back the glow of autumn kitchens and long family nights. Hog maw stew reflected a time when nothing from the animal was wasted and every part was turned into something filling and flavorful. The pig's stomach, called the maw, was carefully cleaned, stuffed with diced potatoes, onions, and mild sausage, then simmered until the broth turned rich and fragrant. African-American families in rural towns relied on this dish to stretch scarce meat across a large household. Preparing it was a full-day task that required patience and the steady hands of experienced cooks. Children watched elders season the stuffing with sage and black pepper, learning that careful work rewarded the family with warmth and nourishment. Served with cornbread or rice, the stew filled bellies after long hours in fields or factories. The chewy texture of the stomach and the savory filling created a meal that was both humble and celebratory. It was common at holiday gatherings when relatives came from far and near, because a single pot could feed everyone. The smell of slow-cooking hog maw carried through the neighborhood and invited friends to stop by for a bowl. Though few make it now, the memory of that careful preparation lingers as a lesson in respect for every resource. Smoked turkey gizzard gumbo brought deep smoky flavor to the table without expensive cuts of meat. Turkey gizzards were inexpensive and full of character, needing only a long, gentle simmer to become tender. Home cooks first smoked the gizzards over hickory or oak, then added them to a pot with okra, onions, and peppers, building a dark roux until it shone like mahogany. The aroma alone could draw a crowd from down the street. In the 1960s, families used this gumbo for Sunday gatherings and late-night suppers after church revivals. A single turkey yielded enough gizzards to flavor a big pot, proving that thrift and flavor could live in the same bowl. Rice was the natural companion, absorbing every drop of the spiced broth. Friends and neighbors often traded ingredients, swapping garden vegetables or homemade stock to perfect the recipe. The gumbo simmered for hours while stories were told and songs were sung, making the meal as social as it was nourishing. Today it is rarely seen outside of small coastal communities, but its spirit of patience and shared effort remains an important part of African American culinary history. Collard green egg rolls were an inventive twist that showed how African American cooks embraced creativity in the 1960s. Traditional collard greens, long cooked with smoked meat, were chopped, seasoned, and rolled into thin wrappers before being quickly fried. The result was a crisp shell around a deeply flavorful filling, blending Southern soul with a hint of Asian influence from growing city markets. Families served these at church fundraisers, jazz club nights, and community dances, where they disappeared as fast as they hit the table. The recipe used leftover greens from Sunday dinners, giving new life to a familiar dish and stretching ingredients for another meal. Children loved the crunchy texture, while adults appreciated the familiar seasoning of vinegar, garlic, and smoked pork. They traveled well, making them perfect for picnics and late-night gatherings after work shifts. Preparing them together became part of the fun, with everyone helping to roll and seal each packet before frying. Though today they are rarely seen outside a few family cookbooks, they stand as proof of how African American cooks turned tradition into innovation, celebrating resourcefulness and flavor in every bite. Stewed okra with ham bits carried the taste of southern gardens and the smoky richness of cured meat straight to the dinner table. Fresh okra, sliced into tender rounds, cooked slowly with diced country ham, onions, and tomatoes until it formed a savory stew with a gentle thickening from the okra itself. This dish was a staple in African American households across the South during the 1960s because it used simple ingredients that grew in home gardens or could be traded with neighbors. The ham bits provided enough salt and depth to flavor the pot without needing large portions of meat. Families often prepared it on warm summer evenings when vegetables were plentiful, and appetites called for something hearty but not heavy. The stew was served over rice or spooned beside cornbread, soaking into every crumb. Children learned to love the silky texture of okra when it was cooked this way, its natural juices blending with the tomatoes to create a rich sauce. Conversations stretched late into the night as the pot gently simmered. Though many modern kitchens overlook it, this dish remains a quiet symbol of patience and the gifts of a backyard garden. Barbecued rabbit was a weekend favorite in rural African American communities, combining the thrill of the hunt with the joy of slow cooking. Rabbit meat, lean and mild, was marinated overnight in a mixture of vinegar, herbs, and spices, then slow grilled over wood coals until tender and smoky. In the 1960s, when grocery prices climbed and wild game was more accessible, this dish was both economical and celebratory. Families gathered outdoors, turning the grill into a social event that drew neighbors from miles away. The scent of wood smoke and tangy sauce filled the air as musicians played and children chased fireflies. Hunters shared stories while brushing the meat with homemade barbecue sauce, each recipe slightly different but all rich and bold. Rabbit provided a surprising delicacy, tasting like a cross between chicken and turkey, and was served with greens, cornbread, or potato salad. It required patience, which only added to its special place in community life. Today, barbecued rabbit is a rare sight, but those who remember it speak of warm nights and the satisfaction of a meal earned through both skill and fellowship. Fish chowder with salt pork brought coastal flavors to African American tables, especially in Atlantic communities where fishing was a daily way of life. Fresh fish caught in local waters simmered with onions, potatoes, and creamy milk, while cubes of salty pork added depth and richness. This chowder was a common supper in the 1960s because it used whatever the nets provided, from cod to flounder, keeping costs low while feeding a crowd. The scent of the sea mixed with the smoky aroma of salt pork as pots bubbled on stovetops in small seaside kitchens. Children came home with buckets of clams or fish to contribute, making the meal a true family effort. The chowder warmed fishermen returning from long days and gave comfort during stormy nights when boats stayed in the harbor. Served with thick slices of cornbread or hard crackers, it was both filling and restorative. Many elders recall how a single pot could stretch to feed unexpected guests, reinforcing the culture of open doors and shared meals. Although restaurants rarely feature it now, the memory of fish chowder lingers in stories of community and the bounty of the ocean. Gullah fried shrimp rice cakes carried the legacy of the coastal Carolinas and the enduring traditions of the Gullah people. Leftover rice, seasoned with herbs and a touch of spice, was mixed with small shrimp caught from tidal creeks, shaped into patties, and fried until golden. These cakes celebrated the abundance of the sea and the skill of cooks who transformed simple ingredients into something extraordinary. In the 1960s, they were a common sight at fish fries, church picnics, and family reunions, offering a crisp exterior and a tender, savory interior. Children loved to snack on them straight from the skillet, while adults paired them with tart sauces or fresh greens. The recipe honored both African and island roots, a direct line to ancestors who brought rice-growing knowledge across the Atlantic. Making the cakes was a communal task, with families cleaning shrimp together on porches as evening breezes carried the scent of saltwater. Today they are rarely found outside the Lowcountry, but each bite speaks of resilience, creativity, and the deep connection between land and sea. Sorrel drink, often called hibiscus punch, was a ruby-red holiday beverage that brought a Caribbean heartbeat to African American celebrations. Dried hibiscus petals steeped in boiling water released a tart crimson brew, sweetened with brown sugar and brightened with ginger, cloves, and citrus peel. In the 1960s, this drink flowed at Christmas gatherings, summer cookouts, and church anniversaries, cooling guests and sparking conversation. Families with Caribbean heritage kept the tradition alive, while others eagerly adopted it for its bold flavor and brilliant color. Children watched in wonder as the deep red liquid poured into glass pitchers, its aroma rich with spice and fruit. It was refreshing on hot evenings and warming when served slightly heated in the winter. The drink carried stories of migration and cultural exchange, a symbol of how African American communities welcomed flavors from across the ocean. Preparing it required patience as the petals steeped and the spices blended, turning a simple tea into a festive centerpiece. Though it is less common now, a sip of sorrel drink still recalls the music, laughter, and warmth of gatherings that stretched long into the night. Homemade crackling bread was a masterpiece of thrift and flavor, a golden skillet cornbread loaded with crunchy bits of pork cracklings that gave every bite a smoky depth. African American cooks in the 1960s valued this bread because it turned kitchen scraps into a celebration, saving every ounce of rendered fat and crisp pork skin from hog butchering days. The batter began with stone-ground cornmeal whisked with fresh milk and eggs, then folded around warm cracklings so the pieces stayed crisp when baked. As it rose in heavy cast iron, the aroma of pork and corn spread through the house, drawing children and neighbors to the door. Each slice offered a contrast of tender crumb and salty crunch that paired perfectly with collard greens or a simple pot of beans. Crackling bread was a dish of togetherness, often baked for church suppers, family reunions, and holiday feasts where no part of the hog was ever wasted. Today it appears only in a few family kitchens, but it remains a proud reminder of resourcefulness and Southern ingenuity. Proof that what some considered scraps could become a centerpiece worthy of celebration and memory in every generation that followed. Fried hog jowl was a breakfast and supper treasure in African American kitchens of the 1960s, a cut taken from the pig's cheek and cured like bacon but richer in flavor. Thick slices of jowl were seasoned and fried slowly in cast iron until the edges crisped and the center stayed tender and juicy. The sizzling fat filled kitchens with an aroma that woke the household before dawn, promising a hearty start to the day. Families served it alongside grits, biscuits, or collard greens, letting the rendered drippings flavor every side dish. Hog jowl symbolized the tradition of using every part of the animal, a practice born of necessity and celebrated for its flavor. Many families saved the cooking fat for later, using it to season beans or vegetables during the week. On New Year's Day, fried hog jowl was considered a dish of good luck, eaten with black-eyed peas to bring prosperity. Children grew up knowing that a slice of this smoky meat meant warmth, abundance, and the taste of careful, skilled cooking. Though now a rarity, it remains a cherished memory of frugal creativity and the simple power of a well-prepared cut of pork. Stewed lima beans with smoked ham bone carried the comforting scent of slow simmering through countless African-American homes in the 1960s. Large lima beans, creamy and mild, were cooked for hours with a leftover ham bone that released smoky flavor into every spoonful. The beans absorbed the essence of the marrow and seasoned fat, creating a silky broth without the need for expensive meat. Families often added onions, garlic, and a pinch of black pepper, letting the stew thicken naturally as it bubbled on the stove. It was a meal that could stretch across days, feeding children after school and adults returning from long shifts at factories or fields. Served over rice or with a slice of cornbread, it offered deep satisfaction and nourishment. The ham bone, often saved from holiday dinners, proved that nothing went to waste and that flavor could be drawn from even the simplest scraps. Neighbors sometimes traded bones or beans to complete a pot, strengthening ties within the community. Today, the dish lives on in stories and a few treasured family recipes, a timeless example of how humble ingredients can yield a feast when treated with patience and care. Sweet potato cornbread muffins brought a gentle sweetness and warm color to everyday meals, their bright orange crumb glowing on Southern tables in the 1960s. Mashed sweet potatoes were stirred into cornmeal batter, making a tender texture that stayed moist long after baking and filled kitchens with a subtle, earthy scent. Cooks relied on heavy cast-iron muffin pans so the edges baked to a delicate crisp while the centers remained soft and fragrant. These muffins were treasured at church socials, Sunday dinners, and packed school lunches because they traveled well and tasted delicious whether served hot or eaten cold. Families often used leftover sweet potatoes from the previous night's supper, stretching each root to its fullest value and wasting nothing. Cinnamon or nutmeg added a little extra warmth, but even plain the muffins carried natural depth from the vegetables. Children reached for them first, delighted by the gentle sweetness that needed no butter or jam. Adults paired them with collard greens, fried fish, or a bowl of beans, loving how the muffins balanced savory dishes with quiet grace. Each batch told a story of care and thrift that defined African-American kitchens of the era, a flavor of memory and family. Crispy drum. Fish fillets were a coastal treasure for African-American families living near rivers and the Atlantic shore during the 1960s. Drum fish, plentiful and affordable, offered firm white flesh that held together beautifully when fried and remained juicy inside. Fishermen caught it in brackish waters and often returned home with enough to share among neighbors, strengthening ties across the community. The fillets were dredged in seasoned cornmeal mixed with a hint of cayenne and dropped into hot oil until the crust turned golden and crackling. The sound of fish sizzling in a cast-iron skillet was enough to draw everyone into the kitchen long before dinner. Served with lemon wedges and a side of hush puppies or crisp coleslaw, the dish became a highlight of summer fish fries and church picnics. Children learned to clean and prepare the catch, passing down both skill and tradition. Its popularity rested on affordability and taste, proof that fine meals came straight from local waters. Today, drumfish is less common, yet memories of those crisp fillets linger as reminders of warm nights, full plates, and deep satisfaction shared with love and laughter beside the sea. Chicken feet soup turned what many overlooked into a dish of comfort and deep nourishment, reflecting the resourceful heart of African-American kitchens in the 1960s. Chicken feet, naturally rich in collagen, were simmered for hours with onions, celery, and carrots, producing a broth that thickened into a silky texture without cream or heavy fat. The feet added a flavor depth unmatched by costly cuts, proving that every part of the bird held value when treated with patience. Families often started the pot early so it would be ready by evening, its gentle aroma drifting through the house as the day passed. Children learned patience as they watched the slow bubbles, knowing the reward was a soup that warmed both body and spirit. Seasoned with black pepper, bay leaf, and sometimes a splash of vinegar, it was served over rice or beside cornbread to make a complete meal. Neighbors stopped by for a bowl, drawn by the comforting scent. Though rare today, this soup remains a symbol of ingenuity, turning humble ingredients into something sustaining and rich, a lasting lesson in care and time over expense. Okra pilau blended garden vegetables, fragrant spices, and the enduring tradition of rice dishes that African-American cooks carried forward in the 1960s. Long-grain rice simmered gently with fresh okra, onions, and bell peppers, often enriched by a smoked meat bone or a small piece of sausage to add depth. As the okra softened, it released a natural thickening that coated each grain, creating a dish both hearty and light at once. Families served it as a main meal or alongside fried fish, enjoying how it stretched simple ingredients into a feast that satisfied every appetite. The recipe reflected West African influences still alive in Southern kitchens, a direct link to ancestral one-pot rice cooking that survived generations. Children often helped harvest vegetables from backyard gardens, learning the value of fresh produce and shared work. The scent of simmering okra pilau floated through neighborhoods, a signal of dinner time and community spirit. Practical, affordable, and filled with flavor, it remains a quiet but powerful reminder of resilience and heritage, a dish of memory and pride that deserves a place on modern tables again. Molasses baked beans with salt pork offered a sweet and smoky comfort that defined gatherings in African-American homes during the 1960s. Dry beans were soaked overnight, then slow-baked with dark molasses, onions, mustard, and cubes of salt pork that melted into the sauce. The result was a rich, slightly sticky dish that filled the house with a caramel aroma as it cooked for hours in heavy stoneware. It was served at church picnics, summer barbecues, and Sunday dinners where a single pot could feed a large crowd. Families loved how the beans stayed warm and flavorful even after hours on a buffet table. The salt pork provided deep seasoning without the cost of larger cuts of meat, making it perfect for tight budgets. Children often helped stir the pot, breathing in the sweet steam that promised a satisfying meal. Leftovers improved overnight, ready for breakfast with cornbread the next morning, a lasting reminder of community and care. Braised rabbit with mustard sauce delivered a tender, tangy feast that highlighted the creativity of African-American cooks in the 1960s. Rabbit meat, lean and slightly sweet, was browned in a heavy pot before being slow braised with onions, garlic, and a sauce made from sharp mustard and homemade stock. The long simmer turned the meat fall apart tender, while the mustard gave the broth a bright edge. Many families relied on rabbits raised in backyard hutches or caught in nearby fields, making this dish both economical and fresh. It was often prepared for Sunday dinners or special gatherings when relatives came together after church. The aroma of mustard and herbs filled the house, building anticipation throughout the afternoon. Served over rice or with crusty cornbread, the braised rabbit offered a memorable alternative to chicken or beef. Today it is rare to find, but its legacy lives on in family stories of resourcefulness and the pleasure of turning simple game into something extraordinary. Fried sweet corn cakes were a summertime joy in African-American households of the 1960s, when gardens overflowed with fresh corn. Kernels cut straight from the cob were mixed with milk, a touch of flour, and a sprinkle of sugar, then spooned onto a hot skillet to sizzle into golden patties. The outside crisped, while the inside stayed tender and sweet, creating a snack that pleased children and adults alike. Families served them at picnics, fish fries, and evening porch gatherings, often piling them high beside bowls of greens or sliced tomatoes. The sound of batter hitting hot oil was a sure sign of hospitality, inviting neighbors to stop by for a taste and a chat. Leftover cakes made an easy breakfast the next morning, still delicious with a drizzle of cane syrup or a smear of butter. They celebrated the season's abundance, turning a simple harvest into something festive and full of laughter that remains a warm memory today. Homemade pepper jelly brought a burst of sweet heat to African-American tables in the 1960s, its ruby color shining like stained glass in the jar. Cooks simmered peppers with vinegar and sugar until the mixture thickened into a shimmering spread that balanced fire and sweetness. It was served on warm biscuits or spooned over roasted meats, giving ordinary suppers a lively kick. Families often prepared big batches during late summer when gardens overflowed with peppers, sealing the jars to last through winter. Children helped chop the peppers and listened for the satisfying pop of cooling lids, proof that the jars had sealed. A single spoonful transformed simple cornbread into something bright and exciting. Neighbors exchanged jars during holidays, turning a humble preserve into a cherished gift. Though many now buy pepper jelly at specialty shops, nothing matches the thrill of opening a homemade jar filled with garden heat and careful love. Smoked catfish dip was a rich, crowd-pleasing appetizer that anchored card parties, fish fries, and Saturday night gatherings in the 1960s. Freshly caught catfish was first smoked over hickory until it turned flaky and fragrant, then blended with cream cheese, lemon juice, and a dash of hot sauce. The dip was chilled until firm and served with saltine crackers or thin cornbread crisps, its smoky aroma filling kitchens before the first bite. Friends and relatives crowded around the table, swapping stories while scooping the savory spread. It was a recipe born of river culture, using fish pulled straight from local waters to create something elegant and communal. Leftover dip never lasted long, often becoming breakfast on Sunday morning. The memory of that smoky richness lingers as a reminder of resourceful cooks who transformed a simple catch into a dish worthy of celebration and late-night laughter. Stewed turkey wings with celery and onion made weeknight dinners feel like Sunday suppers during the 1960s. Turkey wings, meaty and affordable, were browned and slowly braised with onions, celery, and homemade stock until the meat turned tender enough to fall from the bone. The vegetables softened into a savory sauce that clung to every bite, perfect for spooning over rice or mashed potatoes. Families loved the dish because it was hearty, inexpensive, and easy to prepare after a long day of work. The scent of simmering turkey filled kitchens, calling children to set the table before the first taste. Leftovers grew even richer overnight, making lunches that rivaled the evening meal. This simple recipe captured the spirit of comfort and economy that defined African-American home cooking of the era, proving that flavorful dinners could come from patience and care rather than expensive cuts of meat or complicated techniques. Ginger molasses. Cookies offered a warm, spiced sweetness that brightened holidays and church bake sales across African-American communities in the 1960s. Dark molasses gave the cookies a deep caramel flavor, while ground ginger, cinnamon, and cloves added a gentle heat. Cooks rolled the dough in coarse sugar before baking, creating a crackled surface and crisp edges around a chewy center. Children eagerly waited by the oven, breathing in the fragrance that filled the house as the cookies baked. These treats traveled well, making them a favorite for school lunches, neighborhood gatherings, and holiday gift tins. Even weeks later, the spice mellowed into a soft warmth that recalled family stories and seasonal celebrations. Every bite carried the careful balance of sweet and spicy that home bakers perfected over generations. Though store-bought cookies are easy to find today, none capture the handmade charm and fragrant memory of these classic ginger molasses cookies. Crispy fried frog legs were a seasonal delicacy for African-American families living near southern wetlands, where summer nights meant fresh catches and lively outdoor meals. Frog legs were lightly marinated with garlic and lemon, dredged in cornmeal, and fried until the meat turned tender and the coating golden brown. The flavor resembled a mix of chicken and fish, mild yet distinctive, making it a prized treat when available. Children joined adults in nighttime hunts along ponds and creeks, learning the rhythms of nature and community. The frying pan hissed as the legs hit hot oil, sending up an aroma that signaled a feast. Served with hot sauce or a squeeze of fresh citrus, the dish celebrated local abundance and the skills passed down through generations. Though now rare on modern menus, the memory of those crisp bites connects families to a time when dinner was truly caught by hand and shared under warm evening skies. Hush puppies with minced onion turned simple cornmeal into something irresistible, a crunchy side that completed every fish dinner in African-American households of the 1960s. Cornmeal batter mixed with minced onion and a splash of buttermilk was dropped by spoonfuls into sizzling oil, puffing into golden nuggets. The onion added a gentle sweetness and a savory edge that balanced fried fish perfectly. Families gathered for fish fries, where plates of hush puppies disappeared faster than they could be cooked. Children loved their bite-sized shape and crisp edges, while adults appreciated their ability to stretch a meal and satisfy hungry crowds. The sound of batter hitting hot oil became part of summer evenings filled with laughter and music. Leftovers rarely lasted, but when they did, they made a quick breakfast the next morning. Hush puppies remain a beloved Southern tradition, but the hand-mixed, onion-rich versions of the 1960s carry a flavor and spirit that few modern recipes can match. Apple stack cake layered tender sheets of spiced cake with thick, cinnamon-scented apple filling, creating a dessert as striking as it was delicious. African-American families with Appalachian roots cherished this recipe in the 1960s, passing it down from mothers and grandmothers who learned it generations before. Dried apples were stewed slowly with sugar and spices until they became a rich paste, then spread between thin cakes baked individually and stacked high. The cake rested overnight, so the apple filling soaked into each layer, turning the dessert moist and fragrant. Slices revealed beautiful stripes of cake and fruit that delighted guests at weddings, reunions, and Sunday suppers. Children marveled at its height and sweetness, often sneaking tastes while it cooled. Each cake required patience and cooperation, with family members baking layers side by side. Though few attempt it today, the apple stack cake remains a symbol of love, endurance, and shared effort. Braised goat with sweet peppers brought Caribbean warmth into African-American urban kitchens during the 1960s, reflecting the influence of immigrants who shared their flavors with new neighbors. Goat meat, marinated with garlic, thyme, and vinegar, was browned and slowly braised with sliced sweet peppers until tender and aromatic. The peppers softened into the sauce, adding natural sweetness that balanced the rich, slightly gamey meat. Families served it over rice or with crusty bread to soak up every drop of the fragrant broth. The dish became popular in cities where Caribbean markets offered fresh goat and vibrant produce. Gathering around the simmering pot, relatives exchanged stories while the scent of spices filled the home. Its bold flavor and long cooking time made it ideal for special occasions, reminding everyone of distant islands and the blending of cultures. Though less common now, this recipe remains a testament to the diverse influences shaping African-American cuisine during a decade of migration and change. Pickled okra with garlic gave African-American households a tangy, crunchy treat that could brighten any meal in the 1960s. Fresh okra pods were packed into jars with garlic cloves, dill seeds, and vinegar brine, then left to develop a sharp, savory flavor. The result was a crisp pickle with a gentle bite, perfect for serving alongside fried chicken, greens, or simple sandwiches. Families enjoyed the satisfying snap of each bite and the way the pickles kept through winter months when gardens rested. Children often helped stuff jars, their small hands fitting the slender pods into place before the brine was poured. Neighbors traded jars during holidays, making the pickles both food and gift. Their bright taste cut through heavy meals and added life to humble plates. Although grocery shelves now offer countless pickled vegetables, homemade pickled okra with garlic carries a flavor that speaks of careful preparation and the warmth of shared tradition. Buttermilk chess pie was a simple custard pie with a tangy twist that graced countless potlucks and Sunday tables in the 1960s. The filling, made from buttermilk, eggs, sugar, and a touch of cornmeal, baked into a smooth custard with a golden top. Its flavor balanced gentle sweetness with the pleasant tang of cultured milk, making each bite refreshing yet rich. Families loved it because it required only pantry staples, yet delivered a dessert fit for celebration. Served slightly warm or cooled to room temperature, it paired beautifully with coffee after church or as a late evening treat. Children licked the mixing spoon while adults savored the creamy slices, often dusted with a light sprinkle of nutmeg. The pie traveled well to community gatherings where it quickly disappeared from serving tables. Today it remains a quiet classic, but the memory of a homemade buttermilk chess pie still brings back the comfort and pride of 1960s home baking. Share your favorite forgotten flavor in the comments and tap like and subscribe to keep these soulful kitchen stories alive.